All right, let's pick up on day 4. Part 1 was page 1 to 111, so I'm going to start on page 112 now. It's going to be part 2 of day 4. It says, is it explosive, incendiary, or poison gas? Well, that stands to reason we have to answer that question. Is it one of these three things? Then it goes on to say is it a bomb, a missile, a grenade, a rocket? And that's not quite as clear cut because those terms are military terms. I mean, the military design, they created the grenades, they created rockets, they created missiles. That's where they come from. So we have to look and say, well, is this similar to, or would it be used like one of these items? A good example might be a pipe bomb that someone has made to light and throw like a grenade. Well, that would still be a grenade, although an improvised grenade. So we look at that. And then the most important step is this: in this process, it is designed for use as a weapon, and then critical because explosives by themselves are not destructive devices. They are used by the ton. Millions of tons of explosives are used and manufactured in the United States every year and used legitimately in commerce, from mining to quarrying to building roads to all kinds of things, and that's a perfectly legal and very beneficial use of the material. So we have to look at, though it is designed for the legitimate social use, does it have a real purpose in society that benefits society, or is it designed in a way that's not beneficial for society? It has no legitimate purpose, and we have to look at that, as one of the exemptions under the law is for sporting purposes. Shotguns are generally regarded as a sporting weapon, absolutely. But for example, a grenade typically would not be looked at that way because we don't use grenades to hunt animals with, and so we look at the purpose of it. Does it have any socially redeeming value? And so can a combination of parts be considered a destructive device? Yes. In the statute, it does talk about an assemblage of parts. In other words, are the parts, it doesn't have to be assembled in one piece. Do you have all the parts necessary to create that? And that is something that we look at very closely, because upon first reading of the statute, people might say, well, gee, if you come into my house, you maybe can find all the parts necessary to build a bomb. I mean, I've done some work on some plumbing in my house. I've got some old fittings in the garage. I can maybe put together the pipes to make a pipe bomb, and I'm a pretty avid hunter, so I've got some reloading supplies on my workbench to include powder. And there's some leftover fireworks from the 4th of July. I could pull a fuse off that, and I could probably make a pipe bomb out of all that. So am I violating the law? The answer to that is no, you're not violating the law, because you haven't taken the affirmative step to take those components and assemble them together. And unless you assemble them, well, you can't put them together. But I mean, put them on the same workbench, start modifying them to work in unison with each other. You haven't begun the process because your fireworks are in a different bag, out in the shed out back, left over from the 4th, and your pipes are in your plastic bin under your workbench, and your reload stuff is obviously with reload stuff. You've got bullets, and you've got your brass, and you've got your primers all sitting here and there in your press, and you probably haven't tried to assemble those together to make something different. You're using them for their intended purpose. You referred earlier to that. The law requires that certain items be restricted, right? There are, yes. And what's your understanding of why that is? Well, explosives are restricted to a certain extent in this country under the Safe Explosives Act. You're required to have a license to possess explosives, and they have to be stored properly. And if they're used for certain permits, you have permits to use them. It stands to reason we don't want a neighbor going out and blowing up a tree in his backyard and blowing our windows out by accident. We don't want a terrorist or a criminal go to the store and buy a case of dynamite and use it against society. As far as destructive devices, they are also regulated. It's not that they're per se illegal, but they are regulated. I'll use an analogy. All right, let's continue. But if we want one, we can in fact have it registered and go through the process and acquire it. It's just a more lengthy, more difficult process designed to have better control of these weapons that Congress has deemed to be more dangerous, and so there is a way of doing it. But it's just they're restricted. There's certain permitting processes, tax stamps, licenses to be acquired, things like that. And that's all for safety. It's for public safety, yes. I'd like to turn your attention to March 10th and March 11th of 2011. Do you remember the time period? I do. And did you have a role in this investigation? I did. I was requested to come up and assist our Anchorage office and our Fairbanks office with the execution of multiple search warrants in the Fairbanks area. And did you do that? I did. I'd like to go ahead and, well, at first I guess I'll ask you the March 11th, 2011. Okay, did you participate in a search of the white utility trailer? I did. And where was the trailer located? Where did you do the search? I forget the exact hangar number, but it was located at the airport on Fairbanks in one of the fire department hangars. Okay, so it was in an enclosed area, yeah. Was it in an enclosed warehouse utilized by the fire department at the airport? And specifically with regard to that search, can you describe what your role was? Well, because we had suspicion that there might be explosives that might pose improvised devices that might pose a hazard to people, myself and another bomb technician were instructed to open the trailer and do what we call an initial search. And what we're doing is, versus doing a thorough search, we're cataloging anything we find. We're doing an initial visual search to ensure there's nothing that's going to harm somebody else if they move it, handle it, things like that. And there's nothing that's going to blow up all of a sudden and injure or kill somebody. And so that's what you did on that day. That's correct. Okay, let's leave it there and have lunch, follow my instructions about recesses, and come back to go to work at 1:30. All right, all rise. This matter is in recess until 11:30. The court, you can step down. Mr. Whitley, I wanted to raise two exhibit questions. One is, I don't have any list of exhibits proposed or anything from the defense, and all of a sudden we're at CDG is the first one, and I don't know how they're numbered up here or what you've done, but I know you're not required to disclose too soon, but it would be helpful if when we get into our exhibits, if I had a list of what you anticipated offering. We have all these weapons and munitions typically. Oh, thanks. That's pretty efficient. Miss Hayden, Your Honor, we gave one to Madam Clerk this morning. Oh, good. I thought that was my copy. Thank you. That just helps me. That's why I asked. Oh, sorry, I've written on it. We can get another one. Oh, thank you. Well, it helps me to keep track of things. I assume that the jury will have the exhibits in the jury room during the deliberations with the exception of weapons and firearms. Is that assumption correct? First, I assume that's all these documents and stuff. Scrocky, we're thinking firearms but no ammunitions. Well, because there is. Anyway, the documents the jury will have in the jury room with them during deliberations. Yes, right, yes, okay. I wanted to advise the jury of that and wanted to be sure that there was no question about it, so they know and they'll have a chance to look at these things closely. One matter, if I could bring up, Judge, I think it's pretty clear that we've been working pretty hard to get exhibits moved in here into court, so there's no disruption. I do have an issue with this defense tactic of I want to see before we walk up to a witness what's in the bag, and I see that as frankly a tactic to make it look like we haven't disclosed things. These exhibits have been there here. The court. I look at it like a lawyer doing their business carefully. I know, sir, but with all due respect, these things are here in the morning, and if they want to look at them earlier, we'll be happy to make them available to them earlier. Well, and we've done, we think, far and above. I want you to do everything you can outside jury time. Well, and so they're here. But I don't know what you need to know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. There is. And I don't know what defense counsel has done or what you've done between, and they saw them before and now, and if there are any changes, but they got a right to check that. I hope it doesn't take time and out of the jury's time. So if they know what's coming next, hopefully, Lamoureux, they do. You can see the exhibits out of a court before we start or whatever. You've been sending them exhibit list every night? Okay, good. We'll try and do it on our own time rather than the jury's time, all right? Oh, yes, sir. If I may. Yes, sir. I think all of us objected to a cell phone, and then we hear testimony about stickers, cell phone. That's not identified when it was offered. Well, that put us a little on edge. Wait a minute. Well, I understand that. I assume from the testimony the stickers were on there all the time, and if that's the case, that is the case. The court, you should have seen the stickers when you looked at it before, but I don't know. Scrocky, yes. I mean, we miss. That's the case. We missed some things too. We're not perfect. Okay, 1:30. All rise. The matter's in recess until 1:30. All rise. His Honor, the court, this United States District Court is again in session. Please be seated. We have another juror note. Mr. Traverso is hard to hear without his microphone. I think the jury wants to hear what you have to say. The clerk, I had nothing to do with it, so be careful about that. We don't. And everybody else, when you move around, I know Denali doesn't like to pick on you, but that's her job, so be sure you do that. Also, the note indicated there are two members of the audience that are typing on their computers that are distracting. So those of you that are working on computers, get as far away from the jury as you can. The court, I don't know if any of the reporters and others are doing that, but maybe whoever's here can suggest that to them, and I'll tell the jury if they are distracted to let me know, and I'll move people around. Anything else? Let us proceed. Bring the jury in, please. The court, okay, please be seated, folks. One of you indicated that you heard some distractions from computers being used in the audience, and I am not sure any of the computers users are present now, but I've asked them to move to the back of the courtroom. But if something like that occurs and it is distracting to you, raise your hand and let me know, and I can fix it on the spot. I'm sure I told you, but the exception of ammunition or ordnances, as Mr. Whitley called it, the exhibits will be in the jury room with you during your deliberations, or you'll be allowed to see the firearms but the documentary exhibits will be in the jury room with you for sure. So if there are things you see in the courtroom you want to look at more carefully, you will have the opportunity during deliberations. Okay, all right, Miss Lamro, you may continue. Miss Lamro, good afternoon, good afternoon. When we left off, you were discussing the role in the search of the trailer. That's correct, up in Fairbanks, and you were part of the bomb tech team that searched the trailer, right? That's correct. And what was another part of your role or reason for being up there then? Well, in addition to ensuring there was no hazards that would hurt any other officers on scene, it was also to perform the service of recognizing any explosives or potential devices that may be present, bringing those to the attention of the other officers, and to then render determinations based on your examinations. That's correct. Let me go ahead and show you what's been admitted in Exhibit 339. Madam Clerk, if we could have the lights, please. Do you recognize that photo? I do, yes. And what do you remember about that? During the search of the trailer, this bucket was recovered from it. It contained, I forget the exact number, I believe around 17 or so training grenade bodies with expended practice grenade fuses in it. Let's go ahead and look at Exhibit 343. There appears to be some grenade bodies and extended fuses from the bucket. And you saw those and examined them the day they were taken out of the trailer. Yes, we had to examine them upon discovery to ensure they were not live grenades, because obviously we would handle and treat live grenades much differently than an empty body and an expended fuse. Miss Lamro, if we could have the lights, please. I'd like you to, what's been admitted as Exhibit 411. Okay, thank you. Is that the same bucket that we were just looking at in the photo, Exhibit 330? It looks like it, yeah. If you could go ahead and pull some of the items out of the bucket, that'd be great. Do you mind if I stand, Your Honor, pardon me? Do you mind if I stand? No, that's fine, thank you. If you could go ahead and lay those out, that'd be great. Would you like me to pull all of them out, or no? Just a few of them, just a representative sample. That'd be great. Okay, so where are they? They said you were supposed to determine whether they were live. That's correct. Were they live? No, they were not. No, that was whenever our primary capacity as a bomb technician first and foremost, and that's to ensure the safety of both the public and our fellow officers, that they may be conducting the search or performing law enforcement actions. When these were discovered, the first thing we had to do was determine what kind of hazard they posed to everyone present. In this case, we had predominantly the round baseball type grenades. They're a training version of an M69, which is a current issue military hand grenade. This has been used since Vietnam in the U.S. inventory, and that's the training version. There's not actual military grenades, first off. These are cast types or replicas, so they were never owned by the military. The way I'm sorry, how do you know that? Well, by looking at the actual body itself, you have a grind marks down the side, and then you know the same over here as well. Those are casting marks, and the actual military bodies are not cast that way. They're formed differently. Okay, and also the surface texture is rough and grainy, and that's usually a sand mold, which is a cheaper process of making it, but the military ones are much smoother in appearance as well. But anyway, the first thing we established is the fact that they have a hole at the bottom, and this hole was referred to as an emission hole. In training, they're obviously the same size as a real grenade and approximately the same weight, so a soldier would be given these during basic training or advanced infantry training to utilize to learn how to properly use the grenade. And one of the big things you've been learning how to use a grenade is how far you can throw that grenade, because when grenades explode, the fragmentation explodes in all directions, so you have to throw it in a safe enough distance away from you, or you may be inside the kill zone yourself. It's not like a rifle or a pistol that you point in one direction, so they have to have a good deal of practice with them first. And the way it works is they have a training fuse that goes with them, and in this case there's an expanded practice fuse. And in a live one, you would actually have a primer inside under the spoon, the same as a pistol primer of a shotgun shell, a small delay element built up into a fuse neck, and which is when they pull it they have so many seconds before it actually explodes, and it's a pyrotechnic delay that an aluminum sleeve attached to the bottom half here, the sleeve is filled with a small black powder charge. What happens when you pull the pin, throw it, 3 to 5 seconds later there's a pop or report, and that's to represent the explosion of the grenade, so the soldier knows that it functions. And when you, I'm sorry to interrupt, go ahead. When you say 3 to 5 seconds, well, where do you get that? Practice grenade fuse as well as a live high explosive grenade fuse. The equivalent it would go in this grenade if it was real has a 3 to 5 second delay built into it, and that's to give the soldier enough time to pull the pin, throw it, and possibly take cover because their target may be closer than they would like for it to be, and they would still be in the kill zone, and so they have to dive down and take cover to avoid being injured themselves. So what determines the length of time? The delay on the built into the future from the point of the primer, and I'll go ahead and pull up the pin on this one because it's not a live fuse. Once the pin is pulled, just like I just did, under normal conditions, I'm sorry, alternate juror number 2 name, alternate juror number 2 name, there can't see you before the TV screen. So, oh, I apologize, sir. I'll hold it up higher. Okay, thank you. I apologize. When the pin is pulled under normal conditions, unless there is a non-functional fuse, the spoon, which is the part in the hand, would fly off. This is the spoon. It'll be forced off from a spring-loaded firing pin. This one does not have that component, but a spring-loaded firing pin would then flip forward, hitting the primer that's located in the center here. The primer, the same as the bullet, would fire, lighting a small delay element. And think of it as a piece of fuse from a firecracker. It's a pyrotechnic mixture that's packed into a steel tube, and it burns at a certain rate of speed, and it takes about 3 to 5 seconds to burn down. Once it burns down, if the government, when they manufacture these, can just adjust that with packing more or less element delay into it, would hit the black powder source at the bottom, creating the audible report or bang, and that way the soldier knew the grenade functioned and didn't function in their hand, because they would hear that. If it banged in their hand, obviously they would be dead in training. Now the grenade bodies are designed to vent with the emission hole, that when the black powder fires, no fragmentation will come out and all of the pressure is vented from the bottom. So therefore, not to injure the soldier during the training. And so that's how a practice grenade would work. Okay, so again, we looked at the hole at the bottom to ensure it's a practice model. It is. The next thing I looked at was with them intact like this. There's a hole right in the junction where the spoon bends, and I can show it better on this one with the spoon gun. There's a large hole there. I say large, about 1/8 of an inch. If it were a functional fuse, that hole would have a pin or a rod, a metal rod. That's the hinge the firing pin rotates on. So that, with that being vacant, I know there is no firing pin on this fuse. So pulling the pin, releasing the spoon, there's nothing going to happen. I know that for a fact, so I looked at that. And then we were able to turn the grenade upside down and use a flashlight. I looked into the emission hole, and at the point, we could see that the fuses had a hole in the bottom of them, and which is indicative of an expended fuse, or one that's been functioned and no longer possessed any explosive hazard. So we did this visual examination on all the grenades in the bucket to determine if they were in fact safe to handle, safe to store, safe to transport, things like that. When you say expended again, what do you mean when you say the fuses were expended? Well, functioned. It would be the same as if you were out target shooting. You have your bullet you put in the gun. When you fire it, you have an empty cartridge casing that comes out. That's what an expended round, the cartridge casing. Well, this would have been live fuse. Someone pulled the pin, it functioned, and it exploded to some extent. Afterwards, what's left behind is this, and this would be the expended fuse. So it's consumed all the explosive materials in it. If we could go back to the picture of 343, and actually you could put those items away, Mr. Whitley. If we could have the lights, Madam Clerk, so you examined each and every one of the grenade, we did. Okay, and in this picture, grenade bodies, I should say. In this picture, there's one that's obviously not like the others. That was this one right here, which is, there are replicas of an M69 series current edition military hand grenade. This is a replica of a Mark II military hand grenade used prior to and during World War II, so an older version, but still a copy of a training version. Can you explain actually what the difference is between a baseball grenade and a pineapple grenade? Well, and without trying to be too gory about it, the hand grenades, which kind of resemble a Hershey chocolate bar on the outside with the serrations, those serrations were placed there in the casting process, so when the explosion occurred, it would break apart on those lines, and each chunk of steel would become fragmentation designed to injure or kill the enemy. What they found was, by going with a solid body and the actual military ones, the serrations are on the outside what it does is it creates smaller fragments and many more of them, so you have more smaller fragments. The military likes this because it's more effective weapon on the battlefield. With more fragments, you have the potential to injure more soldiers, more enemy soldiers, and the more you injure, unfortunately, in war, that's a good thing. Let's go ahead and move to what's been admitted in Exhibit 474, 475, and let's go ahead and look at 476. What are we looking at in these photos? It's obviously a cardboard box with several components in there. The components of interest to someone like myself would be, and I don't have a way to point at them. If you look on the top dead center of the photograph, you have a blue piece of metal with a brown tip on it. It looks like this spoon, and that's what it is. It's a grenade. It's a grenade spoon off of an M228 practice hand grenade, and that nomenclature is derived because blue was the color for training in the military, and the brown represents low explosive, which represents the black powder charge it would have had if it was a color code system. So that at a glance, soldiers can tell you the difference, what they're using. So what does the blue spoon indicate to you? Well, that plus the safety pin laying next to it, which is what you would see right there, one like it, that's a particular one, and there's also a washer, what appears to be a blue washer, just above the end of the spoon at the very top of the picture. Typically they put a washer between the fuse and the grenade body to get a good seal, and you're talking about this little blue. Yeah, that's correct, Adam, right there. Okay, it appears. I cannot. Yeah, say for sure. But let's move back to 475. Yeah, that's a better picture of it. Okay, right there. And those three items are certainly indicative of that. What would happen if you had a fuse and you functioned it? You would have the spoon left, you would have the safety pin, the spoon and the safety pin would remain in pretty close proximity to whoever throw it, because as you would pull the pin, you would usually drop that where you are at. As you release the spoon, it would fly off near where you are at, and you'd throw the grenade. So it's indicative at one time there was probably a fuse to go with those components. In addition to those components, if you look to the left of the item we're talking about, on the left hand side of the box, about midway, there's two plastic bags right in there. There's also a green metal spoon, which looks to be it's a hand grenade spoon right there, painted green. Green is typically the color of a live fuse, so a fully functional fuse, not a training fuse. But there are numerous versions of it, so I can't tell you the exact nomenclature it came from, but the color code of green, OD green, looks like that. Is the correct color code for a live fuse. OD green is that what you said? Olive drab is military green. And what does that mean in terms of, you say it's more powerful than the blue spoon? Well, I mean, again, we mentioned that a grenade fuse for a high explosive grenade looks like we use in battle, and a training grenade mechanically are the same. It's the exact same metal body, the same firing pin, spring pin, and all that's the same. Even the primer and the delay element are the same. The only difference is at the bottom of the training version, it has small black powder charge. The real fuse, the one designed for the battlefield, actually has a high explosive detonator attached to it, so it had a blasting cap attached to it, and maintained a primary explosive designed to initiate the explosive inside of the grenade. So it would be more dangerous in that aspect because the explosives are more powerful. Let's go ahead and go back to the search of the white utility trailer, and I'll show you Exhibit 369. Do you recognize that photo? I do. Do you see that when you were, that was at the trailer? I did. That was a separate box. It was located, if I recall, inside the larger box. That was sitting next to the plastic bucket, and the other grenade bodies in it, the training grenades bodies in it. When we opened the box, this is in essence the items we saw. We moved a few of the items to get a better photograph so you could see everything in it, or most everything in it. But the item, do you remember where the JB weld was found? It was inside the box, I believe. Miss Lamoureux, go to Exhibit 370. Those items that came out of the box, they look to be, yes. Okay, Miss Lamoureux, let's go back to 369. Okay, on top, what you see laying there, the center of the photograph is a grenade fuse, and it's slightly different than the one I just showed you. The military makes numerous grenade fuses, not just one live and one training. The one that's shown in the picture is what's called a smoke grenade fuse. Another military tactic besides having grenades that blow up are having grenades that produce large quantities of colored smoke, and they're utilized for things like signaling. If you're needing a medvac or a helicopter's going to pick you up and you're in the jungle or whatever, and you would pop this grenade, the pilot would see the smoke and he can come to that point to pick you up. They're also used for screening operations. If I'm trying to move from house to house during a battle, I could throw a smoke grenade out and create the smoke screen. I could then run through it where the enemy wouldn't see me in order to obscure the range, so hopefully I wouldn't get shot. The system with the M201 grenade fuse, smoke grenade fuse, again, to work the same as this fuse, but What changes is the delay element. For one, these fuses have a shorter delay element between 0.7 seconds, just over half a second, so up to 2 seconds, and there's no way of knowing what you have in that range. What was the delay again on that? The delay is between 0.7 and 2 seconds, and you don't know which one you have if you have a 0.7 or a 2. The reason why is pyrotechnics burn no matter how good you are. No matter how good you are with chemistry and the way we load things, there's always some variables, some variants, and it's not an exact science. So they give the soldier a window of time that the fuse will function. It'll function between 0.7 and 0.2 seconds and 2 seconds. So very quick. That's because they're designed for smoke grenades. Smoke grenades don't explode. So if I were soldiering a smoke grenade initiated in my hand, I wouldn't be killed or injured. I would be generating lots of smoke. I mean, I could see, but I'm not going to be injured. I'm not going to be injured, so they have a shorter delay. They also don't have the high explosives on it. What they actually have is pyrotechnic ignition mixture. It's a mixture of potassium perchlorate and titanium, and what that is, it's a pyrotechnic ignition that burns very hot to ignite the smoke mixture. So it's designed to light that smoke grenade off and really get it going. So it's how would you characterize it in terms of a range of a low to high explosive? I mean, well, it's a low explosive because it doesn't detonate, it deflagrates, which deflagration is burning, while detonation is slightly different. It does burn, but the shockwave precedes it. It's a little more technical definition. This is a low explosive and it burns very, very hot. This would burn over 1,000 degrees centigrade, so it's very hot, very intense fire when it lights. And again, that's designed to make sure the smoke grenade lights. So you don't want it to go off and the smoke grenade not to catch. If we go up to back to 370, those items that came out of the box, right? That's correct, yes. And did you examine them on the spot? We did, yes. Can you explain the type of grenades and grenade bodies those are? Well, again, I don't have one in here in front of me. But we have the Mark II, which is an old pineapple John Wayne style with the serrations on the outside, and then we have this baseball top. The style is actually the M26 series, and there are several models in that series, M30, M26, and they were used in the Korean War era. So it's actually the grenade that was used between World War II and Vietnam to what we currently use. They call it the lemon grenade because it looked, the body of kind of lemon shaped. It kind of retained the same shape as the old Mark Deuce, but it didn't have the outer serration. So it was a style of grenade used in the interim between World War II and Vietnam. Let me go ahead and, if we could have the lights, Madam Clerk, and I'll show you what has been admitted at Exhibit 400 and 401. And if you could go ahead and pull those out of their packaging. I believe the back is sealed, but this is the same kind of grenade body. It appears to be the same one. We have scissors, I believe. We can have you. Do we have scissors to open this up, open that up? Yes, and this would be the bodies we just looked at in the picture, the M26 style. Again, this is a copy. You can see the grinds marks where the casting was done, and the body itself is very coarse and rough. So this is a replica. It's a replica of a training version. So you have the vent hole in the bottom the same as you did in the M67 and the R2 style, and then this end is threaded to accept the fuse. Your Honor, I hate to interrupt, but I don't think the 400 and 401 have been admitted. Yes, I have them as admitted. You do? Yeah. I apologize. Now, when you found those two in the trailer, they had fuses attached to them already, right? That's correct. There were two fuses. Then there were two extra fuses, that's right. And they had the empty hole in them, right. They had the mission hole at the bottom. They weren't live at the time. Well, the fuses were live. The grenade bodies themselves were not. Unlike the first bucket where all the fuses were expanded, these fuses were live. They were the smoke grenade fuses we just looked at earlier. So they were live smoke grenade fuses. That appears to be the second one, just like the first one. If you like, I can open it, but no, that's okay. Just the same body. That's 401 you just showed. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, 401. Okay, you can put that one. Something it's not really it's not really ironic. It's just the way it is. While the bodies of the U.S. grenades have changed over the years from World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, the only thing that has not is the diameter of the hole and the thread pitch and fuses. So a lot of time you can take a grenade fuse from World War I and thread it into a grenade body today. All these fuses will all fit interchangeably in all the bodies. The only thing that's changed is the shape of the spoon. And as I said, the shape, just the curvature of this and piece of metal, this one's a little more curved to accommodate the roundness of the grenade, and there's one a little more straight because it's more oblong shaped grenade. But you can bend that by hand, but the fuse body and the actual fuse thread itself, I can take that out of this one and thread this one. They're interchangeable. And is that true, vice versa, for live smoke grenade fuses that you can found in the trailer? Could you also fit those training bodies, the ones that were found in the bucket? Yeah, that's correct. The only difference are the spoons themselves may be being bent a little bit to accommodate the shape of the body, but the part that it threads into is identical. Now, I'd like to show you a photo that's been admitted exhibit. I'll go ahead. Hey, G, what's been admitted is 39739. First, with regard to the photo we're looking at here, Exhibit 3, do you recognize those items? I do. There appear to be a package of JB Weld epoxy filler and also a can of unique smokeless powder, red dot Alliant powder. Okay, there were 2 jars of smokeless powder found in the trailer. Is that right? That is correct. Okay, we've just handed Exhibit 3. Are those consistent with what are the 2 brands? Are you able to read on there? Well, the one shown in the picture that I'm holding here, I don't really want to open it because it's got fingerprint powder on it. It's quite, nasty. But it's a Alliant powder. It's a powder manufacturer. And this happens to be red dot, as distinguished by a large red dot on the can. It's type of double base smokeless powder used widely in shotgun, and it can be used for pistol reloading as well. And it's very popular shotgun powder. It's very quick burning smokeless powder. And the other one, there are literally hundreds of powders in market today. It's an Ogden brand. Ogden, another powder manufacturer brand, very popular, very prominent. This is H415 rifle powder, and they often denote their powders by letter, number, sequence, and this is designed for loading rifle cartridges like your 30-06 and your AR-15, something like that. So it's virtually is a shotgun powder, and there's a little slower burning powder, and they're both double base powders, and which means their chemical composition is similar, their morphology, their shape is different. Can you back up there? You said double base powder, yeah. What does that mean? What kinds of powders are there? Smokeless powders were evolved from black powder days, which was like 1,000 years plus or 1,000 years plus of black powder. But black powder has lots of residue and fouling, so it would be difficult to clean your gun after. So we evolved the smokeless powder, a different chemical composition. Smokeless powders come in 3 basic compositions. One is single base. What that refers is how many types of explosive materials are inside of it. On single base, the powder is comprised of nitrile cellulose, which is a nitrated gun cotton or nitrated wood fiber, cotton fiber. The next is double based, which is comprised of nitrocellulose and nitroglycerin. And the third is triple based, which is comprised of nitrocellulose, nitroglycerin, and nitroguanidine. Most of your triple based is used for large propellants, like for Navy guns, artillery pieces. You wouldn't utilize that in your sporting arms. Double based is what you primarily use. And rifle powder comes in like a tubular morphology. It looks on your pencils that have the mechanical pencils, it looks like the lead from a mechanical pencil cut up into short little links, anywhere from a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch long. And what that does is, by having those larger pieces, it burns a little slower, because when you're shooting a rifle, you want a steady burn, because you're going to build gas pressure steadily as the bullet travels down the trajectory of your long barrel, which gives a nice trajectory. On a shotgun or a pistol, you want a powder that burns very rapidly, dumps all of your energy almost at once, because you don't have the lands and grooves first off in a shotgun barrel. There's no way to confine the gas pressure, so you want to force it up there a lot faster, and a pistol's a shorter barrel. So at the end of the day, if you put a fast powder like this in a rifle round, you would damage your rifle. You can blow the breech of your rifle. So there's just a different designs of powder, but both are classified as low explosives. Both are smokeless and double base smokeless powders. And you can use those inside grenades. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, during World War II, the U.S. military used them in their own grenades. What was happening, we were filling out grenades with TNT, and there was a shortage of TNT during World War II because we were using it for our aircraft bombs and our artillery projectiles. 2, we finding that the TNT actually over-fragmented. It was actually pulverizing the grenade shell, and they weren't as effective. So the U.S. military actually started using training fuses with black powder igniters and smokeless powder. They used the EC blank powder, which is very similar to the red dot inside of that. This helped us preserve our TNT supply as well as give us more effective hand grenades. So absolutely. So you can put the powder in the grenade, and that's going to be one thing that helps make it go boom. Well, is that an easy way of saying that? Absolutely. This is the explosive, and in order for any explosion to occur, you have to have the rapid expansion of gases, and these are the explosives that provides that rapid expansion of gases. And could either of those powders work? Yes. Okay, absolutely. Okay, let me show you what we have as Exhibit 417. It's already been admitted, and this is the JB Weld. Okay, I'm sorry. And just real quick, I forgot to ask you about the smokeless powders. Do you remember where you found in the trailer, in the proximity in the box with the 4? I believe the line was found in the box right at the top of it, if I'm not mistaken. Again, the smaller box was inside a larger box. I was thinking it was actually either in the box or the right top of it. Do you remember, was that box like wrapped with cellophane wrap, or was it just open as a box? Honestly, I don't remember. To be honest with you, let's go ahead and look at it. Okay, sure. This is a packet of JB Weld as shown in the picture, 2-part epoxy filler. And what can that be used for in relation to what you've been testing today? Well, there's numerous uses as shown in the bottom of the package. This is a very useful product, sure. But in this case, we'll see this quite often. Unfortunately, in the last 5 years, we've had over 950 improvised grenades recovered in the United States alone. With the emission hole, they can take the JB Weld and mix it up into mix the two components together, and then when you fill the hole up with it, you can pack in the hole and it will seal the hole. Will it work? Oh, actually, the breaking point of the JB Weld, the tensile strength, the shear strength of the JB Weld is higher a lot of times than the cast bodies, because it would hold longer than the cast body would, and you can drill it, cut it, shape it, form it. It's basically an epoxy-based steel filler, very durable. And you talked about the die cast or tap die, and I mean, is that how the grenades bodies originally came when you got them? When you get them? No, we see a variety of methods when we recover improvised grenades. The first thing that has to be done when you have replica grenade bodies, which are easy to get, if you have to fill the emission holes, sometimes they're welded shut, sometimes someone will tap and die, they'll actually thread the hole and put a bolt in there. The other times, those are filled with like JB Weld and filled it out. We've even seen them use Bondo before, like a body filler, to fill the emission hole. But in order for the explosion to occur, to make it a functional grenade, you have to fill the emission hole. Now, if you were to put the powder inside the grenade body and with the smoke and you fuse and seal it up, is it going to ignite? Is that smoke grenade fuse going to be strong enough to more than ignite? More than strong enough. I mean, if you filled the components of the smoke grenade fuse, these bodies filled with powder with the emission hole plugged with a JB Weld, you have a completely functional hand grenade. As a matter of fact, one of my colleagues in the Kansas City office published a research article this last year in the Detonator magazine. It's a professional publication for International Association of Bomb Technicians and Investigators, where we made about 40 of these grenades for research. They were detonated on the police bomb range to look at how well they fragment. And what he found is using a similar bullseye powder, very similar to the red dot, and using weaker fuse, just a pyrotechnic fuse. You say weaker fuse than a smoke grenade fuse is right? Absolutely. Okay, just using a regular pyrotechnic fuse and its electric match in one case, which provides less thermal injury to get it going, they're still getting between 40 to 60 pieces of fragment. So this thing was breaking into 40, 60 pieces when it exploded. So, okay, so you examined the grenade parts and pieces, and they were found in the trailer, and you obviously had to come to a conclusion about what they are. Can you tell the jury what your conclusion is? Well, and again, I mentioned earlier that there's a lot that goes into our determination. We take that very seriously to make a determination if something is or is not a destructive device. It's not something that we jump at. In this case, the assemblage of parts, and the statute calls for an assemblage of parts because they were in such close proximity together in the same box, the powder, the epoxy filler, the grenade body, and the fuses, functional fuses. It would really take I'm not an expert, I'm just someone who, with some basic knowledge, approximately 3 to 5 minutes to make a functional grenade, and half that time would be probably opening the JB Weld packet and squirting the two pastes together, mixing them up, indiscernible. Pour the powder in, screw the fuse in, and you're done. It's a 4-step process, four very simple steps, and the grenade would have equivalent destructive potential of an actual grenade in the U.S. military during World War II. And you concluded that there was actually enough in the material in the trailer to make 4 functioning hand grenades. That's correct. How do you get to 4? Well, we had 4 live fuses, and again, you go back to looking at the totality of the components, and we have multiple grenade bodies. I gotta take a break. This is so freaking hilarious and ridiculous and over the top. Multiple grenade bodies, but without a functional fuse, that's not a functional grenade. We need to look at each component part and try to look at it as it is. Does it have any redeeming social value? Does it have any redeeming social value? I'm sure all of you have seen these grenades, replicas mounted to a board that says "Complaint Department, pull pin, take number." It's just a humorous thing, you know. You would see your boss's desk, so that's one purpose, probably the only purpose I could really think of, other than reenactors maybe, or for a replica grenade. But there's a very limited social purpose for replica grenades. But there is some. There are numerous redeeming values of JB Weld, but it could be used all over the household. Smokeless powder does have a very legitimate social value for reloading and for sportsmen. The smoke grenade fuses really only have one value, and that's igniting a smoke grenade, which we didn't find any smoke grenades, but those grenades that those fuses were compatible with at the scene. But when you put all the four of those together, especially in one in close proximity, there's only one viable use for all four of them together. That's to create an explosive hand grenade, which does not have any social redeeming value. And that's the only purpose in life, is as a weapon to injure and kill. And that's the process to make our determination as a destructive device under the law. That's the biggest bunch of crap I've ever seen in my life. Who is it for him to determine the social redeeming value of pieces and parts found in a trailer that could make an explosive device? And he said it's to injure and kill. What about to defend, right? What about to defend in case you have tyrants running everywhere and you have bloodthirsty reprobates from hell that, freaking insane how this is going. Oh, listen to this. I have no other questions for this witness. Cross-examination. Traverso, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. Where do people get grenade bodies? There are various sources. A lot of times at gun shows, and there are small mail order places that might sell them as well. You can get them off internet, correct? That's correct, yes. All right, a munition store, like a gun show, yeah, probably yes. There are sorts of a wow factor with grenades. I would say yeah, and they're a novelty. Okay, have you received any information from the FBI that the Alaska Peacemakers Militia has detonated a grenade? That they had detonated a grenade? Yeah, that they thrown a grenade or used a grenade at all? No, I don't recall if I did. If I did, I do not recall. Okay, having information. Okay. Okay, so you can buy these grenade bodies on the internet. You can buy them at a munition store. You can buy them at gun shows. Does ATF regulate those disbursements of grenade bodies? No, we do not. The inert replica bodies are not regulated by ATF. No. Okay, when you go to the scene, are you the first in where they have been a report that might be an explosive device there? Well, that's circumstances. Well, that's circumstances. Absolutely. Yes, sometimes other folks, responding firefighters or paramedics or police officers, would come in and discover it. Okay, and hopefully if they had proper training, they'll recognize it as a hazard, back out and call for someone like myself and to come in and mitigate the situation before they go any further. Okay, when you go in, I know the first thing you want to do is to deal with whatever device is looming somewhere in the same room or something, correct? Well, that's the first thing you go to, right? Not really. Oh, it isn't? Okay. Correct me. Want to ensure that we have a safe path to get to the item? Oh, sure. To ensure that there's no other booby traps or other items we may not be aware of? Well, you wouldn't step. But we're going to work on our way to the item, yes? I mean, stepping on JB Weld wouldn't be one of your concerns, would it? No, it wouldn't. Okay, you take after you dealt with the device, what's the first thing you do? Well, after you've rendered it safe or made it inoperable to the point it can't hurt anybody in its current condition at that point, we start to document the device. Okay, and that's the appropriate document, measurements, things like. We usually at that point slow down a good bit because we have to discuss what the outcome of this is going to be. Okay, some devices present such a hazard because they may have homemade explosives or some other sensitive fusing system that we determine that can't not be transported, that can't be moved, they can't be stored safely. We would have to dispose of them or blow them up right there. Even though we're causing property damage, we'd rather have that than cause damage to the personnel. Okay, they're safe. We can take them apart or disassemble them or properly store and process them. Do you take a photograph of the JB Weld on the box? I didn't take any. That was described of the photographs that day, sir. Okay, we had an officer was assigned to do all the photographing. Okay, well, did anybody take a picture of where the JB Weld was before it was placed in the box? I couldn't answer that question. I don't recall, to be honest with you. Okay, I believe it to be in the box. And part of your investigation in the crime scene, an alleged crime scene, is to preserve a report that is compatible with the scene, correct? That's correct. Okay, in your report, did you describe that small box? Did you describe that small box came out of another box? I didn't write a report of this investigation on this, sir. My device determination is just a determination of, okay, the device itself. Your report didn't include anything about where the JB Weld was found, right? Again, no sir, I didn't write a report to that effect. Okay, but you were talking about, being able to readily assemble JB Weld with the components. That's correct. And that would be important, would it not, in your determination of a destructive box? The proximity is what you're asking? Sure, absolutely. Okay, but you did not include in your report anything referenced where the JB Weld was. Again, I didn't write a report to that effect. You wrote a report regarding the drawing a conclusion that it was a destructive device, correct? Well, those were different types of reports, sir. Okay. We have what's called a report of investigation, which would be a report of fact, like the sky's blue today. I would put that in the report of fact, report of investigation. Then my device determination is a report of opinion based on my professional experience, qualifications, and knowledge. And so they would never be included in the same report. Well, do you have another report? No, sir, I do not. Okay, how long does it take for the JB Weld to dry and cure to be usable in the way that you've described it? It would depend on the type of JB Weld. There are numerous products. They have numerous products, right? Some as little as 5 minutes. Others, I believe, in this case, it begins to cure around 4 hours. 4 hours, okay. Do you find any tap set in the box? No, I did not. Did you find bolts that would go in the hole at the bottom of the grade? No, I did not. Shell? Of course, with JB Weld, you wouldn't need either of those two. Okay, but did you find any bolts or tap sets? No, sir. Okay, Now, you mentioned that those grenade bodies are not military issue, correct? That's correct. There are some manufacturing of various private enterprises. Yes, and these are companies that sell them to the public at large, not just to military militia groups, correct? I would have to assume so, yes. Okay. And when you talk about buying something from one of these companies, are there a number of those grenade bodies that would be considered or deemed manufacturer defects? I don't have a lot of knowledge on their quality control process. I don't know. I'm not sure who the manufacturer of these bodies are. And therefore I have little to no knowledge of their quality control process, so I wouldn't know what their defect rate is. Do military use grenade bodies, are those thrown out if they have manufacturer defects? In theory they are, yes. The military has very stringent quality control, okay. And if a defect is caught, it would not be utilized, and they would make their way into the market, correct? Military grenades, yes. Not to my knowledge, and ones that have been considered manufacturally designed, not to my knowledge, but okay, it's possible. I don't believe so though. No. Okay, now if you have a 2-second fuse on a grenade body and it has a hole in the bottom with nothing in it on the bottom, and you have a puff, correct? That's correct. Okay, you don't have any fragmentation. That's correct. Thank you. You noticed in this case that there were some expended fuses, correct? Yes, in the bucket. How many did you notice? I believe there was one of 4 each grenade. Okay, I think there were 17 in the bucket. So, okay, now have you used JB Weld? I have, yes. Okay, have you ever done any research or studies on using JB Weld that's been stored a long time versus JB Weld that's new and just recently purchased? I've never done any studies on it, no. Okay, from personal experience, as long as the tube hasn't been opened, it's usually good to go. Okay, once you open the tube, sometimes they start to dry out like any glue. Okay, did you find anything that were opened in the trailer? I don't remember any that were open, no. Okay, now you mentioned earlier that photographs are taken while you're dealing with a device that you have to deal with. Which crew performs that function? Well, generally speaking, again, because I'm not from the Fairbanks area, I didn't personally know all the officers on the scene, but generally speaking, when you're executing a search warrant, each person is given an assignment prior to the warrant. Each officer might be assigned to be the photographer. One person might be assigned to be the evidence custodian that will log down each thing that's recovered. Usually in my case, because of my specialty, my assignment is to ensure there are no explosive dangers or threats. Okay, so it would be incumbent upon somebody else in that group who would describe where things are. That's correct. Not you. That's correct. My job is to identify the explosive hazards, and the evidence people who were assigned the responsibility would then photograph it. I would point it out basically and say, here is something that I discovered. This is potentially dangerous and or explosive. You need to document this, and they would then perform the documentation. Okay, Mr. Traverso, I have no questions, Your Honor. Mr. Dooley, Mr. Whitley, I'm Tim Dooley representing Coleman Barney. Yes, sir. Thank you for your service. Thank you. Mr. Dooley and Mr. Robinson, I can impose on you to flash up your pictures ever so often. Earlier, you said it takes 4 hours for JB Weld to begin to cure. That's based on the product information on their packaging and their data sheets from Allright, the manufacturer, and I think also on the packaging it says it takes 24 hours to cure. For fully cure, I believe that's correct. Yes, Allright. I would have to read it to ensure, but I believe that's correct. And you're welcome to read it. I didn't mean to. I believe that's sounds correct though. Let me go to 60 if I may. Now, the back doors of this trailer were opened. Is that the scene that you saw? It does look Correct, yes. All right. Things wrapped in visqueen and saran wrap and bubble wrap, and things were, yes, they were packed. That's correct. Boxed up. That's correct. Do you want the lights? Yes. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I just fogged up. And then 61, if we may, and perhaps a better picture showing the saran wrap, bubble wrap as though it's been shipped. Would you agree? Some of those items were certainly packaged for long-term storage or shipping. I would say yes. Okay, Mr. DeLay, I'm looking at 63. If we could, this is a white bucket already introduced as this photograph. I believe that's a can of the gunpowder in the lower left. Is it? It does look to be that. Yes. Okay. And the next exhibit would be 64, just a bucket, and that's one of the buckets that you pulled out and inspected. That's correct. That's one that had training grenade bodies in it. Okay. Or it looks to be. All right. Now you went in to ensure that nothing is dangerous is in there. That's correct. Immediately dangerous, I guess, is that what you mean? Yes, right. And you found nothing that would fit the bill, nothing immediately dangerous, correct. All right, we all know that grenade shells in there are perfectly legal to have, that's correct. And in and of themselves, we know that the fuses were inert. Is that a correct word to use, or would you use, I would prefer to use the word expended. Okay, inert kind of implies they never possessed explosives. Where these are expended, they did at one point. Okay, you can't tell when it had explosives. No, I couldn't tell you when it was utilized or when it was expended. No, but those expended fuses, they are perfectly legal to have. That's correct. All of the fuses were smoke fuses. The live ones, yes sir, and even the inert ones were. The inert ones were training. Oh, I'm incorrect. Training grenade fuses. They are not. Oh, okay. Smoke grenade fuses, they were training. All right. Grenade fuses. And you were explaining how high explosive fuse is used in a real fragmentation hand grenade. Well, in a high explosive grenade, yes, all right. Then you found no high explosive fuses? Correct, that's correct. Now, these smoke grenades are used by the Bureau of Land Management Forest Service, forest fighting to send up the colored smoke through the forest fire, correct? That's correct. Ms. Lamoureux, objection, foundation. If you know that's the objection, if you know that's what the objection is, the answer may stand. Mr. Dooley, basically when you have a smoke grenade, you're not too worried about getting it far away from you at all, correct? Your main hazard with the smoke grenade malfunctioning is burns, right, versus an explosion. Correct, stuff in your eyes, correct. But it's a 0.7 to 2 second fuse. What's your opinion of using that in an anti-personnel fragmentation grenade? Oh, it would still be very effective, but I wouldn't want to be the guy throwing it. Right, because you'd get yourself killed. The odds would certainly increase. Okay, now that you picked up the unique powder and the Alliant powder, they had been used, both of those bottles, that had been opened before, yes, and some of that seal had been broken, that's correct. And could you tell that one of them was 13 years old, and can you tell from the date on the purchase of those things? I don't remember looking at that. We did a test burn to see if it was still functional powder, and it was. Okay, if I want, you could, since you're an expert, I can have you assume things. Assume you've had this powder stored outside Fairbanks when it can hit 2 million degrees below zero in the summer. It goes up into the 90s, and change in humidity and dryness, that would have an effect on gunpowder, correct? It can have an effect, that is, and storage is very critical when you're storing all types of explosives. The old adage is, you always keep your powder dry. Current containers, especially years ago, they used the metal cans. Now they use plastic cans because the metal would rust because of humidity, things like that. But the plastic cans can be designed to keep the humidity out, and humidity is the worst enemy for propellant powders. If you get used to high humidity, it does lose some of the potential energy. All right. It's not as effective. The talking about rust and the sort of thing, the grenade bodies had rust and the condensation on them. Would that correct you? I don't remember them having. There appear to now. I don't remember them having condensation in them. No, but the rust, they did appear to be overly rusty. Most of them were in fairly good shape. I mean, they may have had some very light rust, but I don't remember them being degraded in any way. Okay, if you were following the Navy disposal rules, you would have disposed of this powder that you found. Wouldn't you agree, Miss Lamoureux? Objection, foundation. Or the relevance regarding the Navy disposal rules. Miss Dooley, well, I think he may answer if he knows. Mr. Dooley, do you know? I'm not sure exactly what role you're proposing, but no, I mean, as an Army bomb technician, we go to the exact same school as the Navy bomb technicians, and we generally operate under the same standards. There are always some exemptions, some variances between the servers, but you know smokeless powder, especially is considered stable. Now, we certainly dispose of that at some point in time, but it's not on a list of materials that would be deemed immediately hazardous and must be disposed of immediately. No. Okay, so I see where Okay, so I see where you're saying that. Assume for a moment we had this 13-year-old powder that was stored outside, and as it was used for reloading, sometimes cartridges were opened in the powder and then emptied back into the powder. That would not be an approved process, would you agree? Well, the military doesn't reload their cartridges, but if I were a reloader, I wouldn't want to do that, no, because now I'm not going to have consistent performance, and usually reloaders loaded their ammunition because they want to know exactly what they're shooting, and they want consistent performance, and by mixing in a foreign powder, I would lose that ability. How much powder was in each bottle? From memory, half to three-quarter full, each one, yes. How much powder would, in terms of weight, would go into one of these, let's say lemon grenades or baseball grenades, a couple of ounces? If you find an electric match inside a trailer, did you find an electric match inside the trailer? I don't recall finding one, and there could have been one found, and it was just not brought to my attention if there was. But okay, not brought to your attention. That's correct. The electric match, it's more powerful than smoke fuse? I wouldn't say that, no. Okay, and the reason powder is very subjective when it comes to pyrotechnic compositions, what you're really looking at is that does it burn, and the duration, and how long does it burn. And in this case, a potassium chlorate titanium mixture, and the quantity and the smoke grenade fuse would burn for a longer duration and probably higher temperature. In the electric match, the light something on fire, temperature and duration give you that ability to increase your likelihood of getting it to ignite. You may not remember this, but I sent you an article about various tests on improvised grenades to U.S. Attorney's Office. That's correct. And in it you referred to electric matches. The article referred to them. I'm sorry? Yes. The article was written by a peer of mine in Kansas City I alluded to earlier. Would you agree with any portion of the article as you sit here today? I would have to reread it before I could say that. In all honesty, on first glance, I don't remember anything I disagreed with vehemently. I may have worded things slightly different, but I haven't read it in a few months. From your recollection, do you recall that the electric match was more powerful than the fuses in the various tests? If I'm not mistaken, he was not using smoke grenade fuses. He was using an M228 practice fuse, which was the black powder fuse. All right, and he was also actually, I stand corrected, he was not, if I recall correctly, he was using an electric match. He was using an electric detonator, which is a high explosive detonator, and he was using a hobby fuse or a visco cannon fuse, which is a 1/16 diameter pyrotechnic fuse, like you find in a 1/16 inch diameter pyrotechnic fuse, like you find on fireworks. If I recall correctly, those are the three ignition sources he used. If the electric stuff was more powerful than this hobby thing, that's correct. All right, and I have the report here if you needed to look at it. I don't want to pull a trick on you or something. You prepare different drafts of your report, correct? Not usually. Well, I'm sorry, different drafts. I write a report. Once I'm satisfied with the report, which involves proofreading process, because unfortunately I'm a product of the Alabama school system, and I tend to misspell things on occasion and forget a few periods, and my supervisor was pretty picky about that. So once I have proofread it, goes up to the peer review process, and during that process, if there's an error found or a discrepancy found, it's sent back to me for correction or discussion. It depends on the error. If it's an error of grammatical or spelling, something like that, I just fix it and move on, because if it's an error where they disagreed with my findings, then it would be discussed at that point. In this case, were the rewrites based on punctuation, quotation marks, grammar, they were substantive? They were not substantive. It was based on my inability to properly punctuate and spell. All right. We all have that. And I rely on the spell checker too heavily, but it doesn't always get the technical terms we might use. And so, did you yourself do any of the testing of the material you're referring to in the article? No, sir, I'm sorry. Of the material you pulled out of the trailer, I did the burn test there on the site. We took a small sample of powder, even though we opened the can and that said that smokeless powder, we opened the can, it looks like smokeless powder. Normal procedure is to do a very small test burn to ensure that it is what it is and it's still viable, functional powder. That helps us to determine how we're going to store it, things like that. But the laboratory does the actual chemical analysis. We didn't know of a burn test. Did you do a report of a burn test? Yeah, I don't believe I did. No. The red dot powder, also called a lion powder, that's correct, it was either in the box, on top of the box. From my memory, I believe the Ogden powder was located in the other can, and that's the memory of the memory, so I could be incorrect. I believe it was either the box or on the box. Okay, I'm going to clip through a couple of pictures. I'll be there in a second. I wanted to show you, I'll divert myself, a 585 if I could. Were you involved in taking this picture, arranging things or anything? I remember finding them. I don't remember arranging them or taking the picture. The picture appears to be after someone was dusted with fingerprint powder, And that was, yes, what not happened in my presence. So I would say this picture was taken at a time that I was not present. All right. Well, it'd be my assumption because they have already been dusted for prints. Were you pulling those things out of the trailer? There were some of these in the box with the JB Weld and the grenade bodies, and you pulled them out of the trailer? Oh, absolutely, yes, sir. All right, all of these things were something you or a fellow worker did? Yeah, myself or a fellow bomb tech. Okay, would you look at the first of these? Yes. Okay, the red, look at the lower left at those 4 items. Yes, sir. And the red tag there, that's the price tag? Could be. I mean, certainly there's an orange square there that resembles some. You're saying orange and I'm saying red. Okay, it could be red. I don't know. I'm not willing to argue that point with you. My wife will have a different color name for it exactly. We have a purple car and she calls it burgundy. How about 640 if I may? Not admitted yet. We could be blank the screen, show it to him. Pretty soon we'll have 640 up there. Do you recognize what's in 640? It appears to be the Mark II style hand grenades. That's consistent with the one on the bucket. I'll move the exhibit 640. No objection. 640 may be admitted. Mr. Dooley, if I may look, looks like it has some wear and tear, perhaps some rust on it currently. No, this is actually the one in the bucket right here. I put on the desk. I pull it out and we could certainly look at it. Sure, no, not really. I mean, there's some paint there flaked off and a little bit dirty, but minor surface rust. At best, very minor surface rust. It looks a little dirty, but certainly no degradation to it. How about 641? The one hasn't been admitted yet either, Dooley. Oh, really? I could have swore. Okay, let's blank the screen then. And what are we looking at there? It's certainly consistent with the one of these newer style grenade bodies like were found in the bucket. I moved 641. It may be omitted. Now that looks like there's some rust on it. There's a very small circle rust up near the top of it. Again, looks very superficial. I'm sure if I dig the bucket, unfortunately the rest of them all look the same, right? So I'd have to dig around a little bit to find the exact one. But now rust on this cast iron, not uncommon, and really it doesn't harm. It doesn't affect it. No, not at all. But it does. But it was in an environment that caused to get rusted. Okay, what was the question there? I'm sorry. Yeah, there was, and he said you nodded your head yes to that. So they have a rust on them. So I assume at some point in time in their life, okay, I may be done with you. I have to check all these things. How many fuses had a spring-loaded firing pin in them? Just the 4 smoke grenades. Okay, and you're mentioning a lot of grenades are offensive use case in the enemy that are 3 to 5 seconds, but the local unit can lengthen the fuse to 6, even 7, correct? That issue, once the fuses are manufactured, they're manufactured. This is just an adjustment by the soldier. Okay, so if the manufacturer is at 6, 7, or 8 seconds, that's how that happens? Oh, that's correct. All right, did you find a long piece of string in the trailer? To be honest with you, sir, I don't recall if we did. How about a baseball bat? I don't recall that either. My intention was primarily on explosive hazards. All right, now we had an FBI agent earlier, and she did not know what a tap and die set was. Could you explain that for anybody who doesn't know? Yes, sir. A tap and die set, and that may not be the exact terminology that a machinist would use, but you can buy them at a local hardware store, auto parts store. What it consists of is an item that looks similar to a bolt, and it has a thread on it like a bolt would have. The difference it being is it's hardened steel, and you can take that and thread it into softer steel, and it will cut those threads. So if I had a hole like this that's been drilled, it's plain, I could take the appropriate size tap, thread into it, it would cut the steel and actually cut threads, and I could then put a bolt into it. That would be a tap. If I'm not mistaken, the die is the reverse. Usually it looks like a nut, and if you had a bolt that threads are messed up on, you could thread that in two and it would correct the threads. So it's just a threading tool. It's a tool that creates threads both in holes and bolts, used widely in auto mechanics and machining, things like that, metalwork. Where each of the bottles of power, I diverted myself on the price tags. Again, if my memory, you showed a picture earlier and I forget the exhibit number, I apologize that you pointed out a can of powder in. That was in I believe it looked like a round plastic, possibly 5-gallon tub that contained the bottle of Ogden powder, and then from my memory again, the Alliant red powder was either in a box on top of the small cardboard box that contained an M22-6 style grenade bodies, the 4 functional fuses, and the JB Weld. Earlier you were saying that you were referring to some grenade shells in front of you, and you said that these were not live. Somebody might think it was just the ones in front of you. You didn't find any of these grenade shells that were live. None of the grenade shells were found, neither the 4 M26 nor the, I believe, 17 M69 or the Mark IIs contained any explosive filler. Does that? You mentioned gun cotton. If you've got the stuff from the hardware store to put on your t-shirt, you could make a really poor gun cotton. Not for, correct? Not for casting. It's pretty strong, not for casting to make it, but it's theoretically possible. Alright, if you had gasoline in an empty jar and some matches somewhere, you could have a destructive device, a Molotov cocktail. Not necessarily, but it's certainly possible. Yes, alright. Again, there's no exact list of what is or isn't a destructive device. Is there some critical evaluation that has to be done? We probably have a can of gasoline in our garage for our lawnmower or snow machine or whatever the case may be, and we probably have small rags in our garage for when we spill the fuel to wipe it up and wipe out our hands with, and we probably have a few empty bottles. But when I pour the gasoline into the bottle and stuff a rag on top of it, I'm probably not using that rag as a plunger on the bottle. At that point, I would say I created a Molotov cocktail, and it would, which would be a destructive device. It would have been assembled. That analogy, yes, it would. All right. It would be readily available for use as a weapon. That's correct. Do you know the regulations and laws concerning registration of firearms? I'm familiar with them, only from my initial training with the ATF, but I don't work with, first off, that's the regulatory branch that would handle that. We're divided into two branches, criminal enforcement, regulatory, and I'm not part of this regulatory side. I'm more explosives, and so incendiaries I do with actual firearms. How about this? Not my specialty. I'm sorry, what were you saying? I'm saying that would not be my specialty, and I would not give anyone advice on that. When I have friends who ask me how to do it, I refer them to this website because I don't know. I don't want to steer them wrong. All right, how about purchasing legal weapons like a sporting arm? Are you familiar with the process of filling out forms for that? I'm not. No. All right, so I can't pick on you about that. Now, your testimony so far is that you believe that J.B. Weld was in a box. The box, from my memory, it was in the box with the powder, the live fuses, and the grenade bodies. That's correct. You did not have to assemble anything or take something out and blow up anything like that. That's correct. Can you buy a grenade body with a hole in it and spent fuse and a green handle on a gun store and a gun show? It's certainly possible. Okay. Well, I scratched everything. I scratched through everything. Thank you. Yes, sir, Miss Hayden. No questions, Your Honor. Redirect examination by Miss Lamro. Mr. Whitley, I want to just follow up on a few items here. In your determination and examination of the items and determining whether the items are a destructive device, is it your understanding that the items have to be operational in order to be destructive device under the law? That's not correct. They do not have to be operational. A lot of that is based on the fact that the statute itself refers to the assemblage of parts. In other words, if you have all the parts necessary to do it, and then also we have appellate court decisions that have upheld the stating that they don't have to be assembled but readily assemblable. Readily assemblable. Okay, so they don't have to be operational to be a destructive device under the law. An example might be if I built a bomb that used a dead battery in it and then went and robbed a bank with it. It would still be a bomb. I'm just a dumb bomber who used a dead battery, and that wouldn't be an excuse to let me off because I didn't use a bomb. The bomb wouldn't function. But we're still going to arrest that person and charge them with that. And it doesn't have to be fully assembled to be a destructive device under the law. That's correct. It just needs to be capable of being readily assembled. Now, with the items that you found in the trailer, would those items make it an operational grenade? They would, and that's what we discussed kind of early on. There are no specialized tools required to do this. It was just mix the putty, pack it in the bottom, fill it in with the powder, screw the fuse on the top. So the fact that their proximity to each other, lack of the other components for them to be used. For example, I didn't find any plaques that said pull in. I didn't find any plaques that said pull pin, take number, or things like that. Not that I had to. I'm just using an example. But what I didn't find, for example, on the powder, I didn't find a reloading press or empty brass and bullets. So it would lead me to believe that the powder is not intended for reloading ammunition. And since it was stored with the grenade bodies and the live grenade fuses, it would be a more logical thought to say it's going to be used for those. I don't think this guy has any socially redeeming qualities. What do you think about that? Now you were asked a lot of questions about the proximity of the items to each other. Now all of those items were contained in the one white utility container. Is that right? That's correct. And they were all in the section of the trailer. That's correct. They weren't spread out among the length of the trailers. If you look at I forgot the exhibit. Let's go ahead. There's a photograph of the trailer that I believe I was asked how it appeared. Let's go ahead and pull it up. Okay, that would be helpful. Thank you. That's the picture from my memory. Miss Lemro, can we have the lights, Madam Clerk? I apologize. I wasn't looking at the big pictures. I got a monitor here I can see. I know you're all looking across the room from my memory. If you look at the floor, you can have a chainsaw, a gas can. There's a large there's large green drums sitting to the left-hand side. In that drum you have a white, well, there's a square bucket. I believe that is the square bucket and contain the grenades. To the right, you have the two large cardboard boxes. And again, my memory, either one of those two boxes or a box right behind that where the fairly large boxes is contained in the other stuff, and that included the small box with the grenade. The two grenade bodies, 4 fuses, power, and JB Weld, they were in a smaller box in one of those boxes, so they were all within a foot and a half of each other, 2 feet. And the white bucket there had 2 grenade bodies in it instead. That container, right? I believe so, yes. Miss Lamro, if we go to 61, it's a close-up, and then 62, then sorry, I mean 63. That's now looking down inside. The white bucket has been taken out of the container. Oh yeah, that is the same container, you're right, from the earlier picture. I wasn't sure. That looks like some green container. And there you can see the powder. So the bucket of green bodies was sitting on top of the right, and the cannon, the hydrogen powder, I still believe the A-Liant red dot was with the other green fuses that were 2 cans of powder. And that powder is stored in its plastic container. Yes, it is, and it's stored inside this. Do you remember that the drum container was? No, I really don't. It was just an overpacked drum, probably a 30-gallon or so overpacked drum. I don't remember what the labeling on it was, though. And when you searched the trailer, did you have to move items around in order to make sure there was no explosive? Well, the way we did it was, we used a methodical process. We didn't rearrange things inside the trailer. We would take the first thing we came to, and we would ensure it was safe. We would look inside the box. We made sure it was safe to move. Nothing was attached to it, like a booby trap or something. If so, we would remove it from the trailer and its contents, so it would be unpacked outside the trailer. And again, the evidence collection team would handle that once we determined there was no explosives hazards, then we go back in and take the next item. So things weren't shuffled around inside the trailer. They were removed on one container at a time and unpackaged outside the trailer. If we could have the lights, Madam Clerk. There asked some questions about electric matches. That's correct. Can you explain, how do electric matches compare to smoke grenade fuses? Well, they're both ignition sources, and they're both fully capable of igniting smokeless powder in this case. An electric match is primarily used for the fireworks industry or for professional fireworks. When they do these large display shows, you might see on television on 4th of July, I guess up here New Year's, because of 4th of July, it doesn't get dark until pretty late. So I'm not sure any fireworks you get up there. But anyway, they're used in professional shows, and it's basically the same mixture as on paper match or a wooden match. But inside it, you have 2 electric wires, the lead to it, and the filament, then like a light bulb. And when I introduced electricity to it, the filament gets hot and it ignites the match mixture on the outside. It bursts into flames. It's used for lighting firework fuses remotely when they're doing thousands of shells from one central point. They're doing a big show. Is one more powerful than the other? Again, as I said, can you compare them? Or you really can. It's when dealing with the ignition source, you're looking at the temperature of burns and how long it burns, so duration and temperature. It's just like if I run my hand through the candle flame really quickly, it's not going to burn me because the duration was so short. But if I hold my handle in the candle flame, it's definitely going to burn me. I've increased the duration that I've been exposed to that heat, so it's pretty much the same way. The smoke grenade will fuse will burn for a lot longer duration than the match, and it'll burn at a hotter temperature than the match. So I'm increasing both my duration and temperature, which increases the ability to ignite the flammable substance. You were asked some questions about the pineapple grenade, for example, and those other grenades having rust on them. Yes, that if you look at the pineapple grenade body now in the light, do you see any rust? No, there's some dirt. There's a little bit of surfaces rust here. You can see in the base down here, there's a little bit of surface rust, but is that all going to impact functioning of the grenade body at all? Oh, absolutely not. There's a fairly thick metal casing. It'd be like your iron skillet getting a little bit of rust on it. It's the iron skillet hasn't rusted through by any stretch of the imagination. It's still, a little Brillo pad or steel wool. You clean it right up. So if you took one of the fuses from the box and put it in the pineapple grenade, and you took some of the powder and you have right there and loaded and put a couple ounces inside of the bottom and then sealed it up with JB Weld, it would function as an explosive grenade. It would. And something to point out, the curing time for the putty fully cures in 24 hours, starts to cure in 4 hours. All that really is a product of confinement. It's scientific fact that just like in your gun, when the powder ignites, it deflagrates or burns. When it burns, it converts from a solid state to a gaseous state, and that gas expands into a lot more space. So anytime I can find that powder whether it's in a rifle cartridge or a shotgun shell or a grenade body or a pipe or whatever, a plastic milk bottle for that matter, once that pressure builds up to the point that the container can no longer hold it, it will rupture, causing an explosion. So if I made it in 5 minutes and went ahead and pulled the pin, I would get an explosion, not a real good explosion because the JB Weld hasn't fully cured. It's going to give first and allow it to vent the pressure, but I'll get an explosion. The longer I wait, the better my explosion is going to be because the better my confinement is. Even if you factored in a full cure time of 24 hours, the JB Weld to cure, would you still consider that to be readily assembled? Oh, absolutely. If you were the person who was using the grenade with a smoke grenade fuse filled with the powder sealed with the JB Weld, would you want a longer delay fuse? I would not pull the pin and throw the grenade because I would be afraid I would not be able to put it far enough before it went off. I would still be in the kill zone because the fuses right now, what's the delay on them? Well, the regular is 3 to 5 seconds, but these were 0.7 to 2 seconds. So it wouldn't be your interest to get a longer delay fuse, absolutely. No other questions, thank you. Mr. Ridley, you may be excused. Yes, sir. Time for break, you may be excused. Take a few minutes, we're still in the session though, a couple of minutes. You can step down, Mr. Whitley, okay. We've just had some very interesting testimony, and I think important testimony from the government standpoint, and we had about 2 hours of it, and we got about a half an hour worth of good hard evidence. This took way too long, and I got my eye on the clock a little bit here, and I would ask you to control your witnesses so they answer the question asked, and I'm liable to cut them off if they go beyond the question if there's no objection in favor of moving things ahead. So I wanted to pass that on. The clerk, all rise. The matter is in recess for about 10 minutes. The clerk, all rise. His Honor, the court, this United States court, again in session. Please be seated. There was one other thing I was going to say, Miss Lamro. You don't get to repeat the direct testimony with the leading questions on redirect. I was honestly trying to move things along at that point, Your Honor. What? I apologize. I was trying to move things along. I know you were, but what that amounts to is restating your case, which is more argument than new evidence. Okay, let's bring the jury in. You got another witness? We do, Your Honor. We call Steve Goetz. Okay, sworn in. We call Ed Morith. And, Your Honor, the next two witnesses, he's going to have some audio clips. There have been provided to defense counsel. We have the transcripts. The transcripts are in the back of the room. They contain the transcripts for the case. Okay, are you going to get that first thing? Well, I think what I'd like to do is lay a foundation first. All right, let's get admitted. If it goes to the plan, then we'll hand out the transcript binders. We'll be needing a court's instruction to refer to until you get it. Mr. Scrocky, yes sir, go ahead. And come, if you'll come here, please. If you'll come here, please. I didn't get the name of the witness. Enter the jury box and stand and face the jury courtroom, please. Raise your right hand. I do, thank you, please be seated. Judge, I didn't record the answer, just so you know. I'm sorry, I didn't record the answer to your oath. I think you said I do. Thank you. Yes, I heard it. Speak right into the mic there, if you would. Mr. Scrocky, sir, if you could state your name and record for the spell of the last name, Ed Morith, M-O-R-E-T-H. Good afternoon, Miss Morith. Mr. Morith, where do you live, sir? Plains, Montana. Plains, Montana, and how long have you lived in Plains, Montana? About 11 years almost. Okay, what do you do in Plains, Montana? I'm a reporter for the Sanders County Ledger newspaper. Okay, and how long have you been doing that? I've been with them for about 4 years, and when I was the editor at the Valley Press for about 6 years before that. Okay, is this your first time in Alaska? No, I was stationed in Juneau for 5 years with the Coast Guard. And how long were you in the Coast Guard, sir? 24 years. Okay, Mr. Morith, I'd like you to turn your attention, if you would, to maybe a little bit about Plains, Montana. How big of a town is it? In town, they have about 1,450 people, somewhere around there. The surrounding area is about 4,300. Okay, and you over in this course of your job, what do you cover for the area? I cover the Plains Hot Springs area. Anything the editor tells me to go cover, schools, meetings. Okay, with respect to sports, maybe one of those meetings you might have covered. I'm going to turn your attention, if I could, to end of November 2009. Do you have an occasion to cover the meeting of a speech for your paper during the time frame in Plains, Montana? Yeah, it was sponsored by the Sanders County Patriots. I think they were called. And you recall covering that meeting, yeah? And could you tell the jury here what the agenda was for that meeting? Well, the key speaker was Mr. Cox. He talked a lot about different things: the government, women's roles, God, the value of the dollar, the militia. There was a lot of things he covered. Okay, you recall being there for that meeting? Yeah, I was there for the whole thing. And do you see Mr. Cox here in the Courtroom today? Yes. Where is he? Right here. Tell the jury where what he's wearing. A pink tie, gray suit. Okay. For the record, if the record could reflect the identification made of Mr. Cox. With respect to this speech that Mr. Cox gave, you said you were there the whole time? Yes. At some point, Mr. Moreth, were you approached by an FBI agent with respect to that speech about a month ago, and you provided with something with respect to that speech? At that time, he asked me if I had been to the speech and could identify from a CD whether it was the speech. And you were provided a CD of the speech? Yes. And a couple of weeks later, now with respect to your listening to that speech, were you able to identify and authenticate for yourself that it was a speech that you heard in Plains in November 2009? Yeah, it was the same speech. All right. And where did the speech occur? What type of facility? It was at the VFW right down Plains. Okay. And Mr. Moreth, when you listened to that speech, you said it was the same speech. Were you provided from our office recently a number of audio clips, segments of that speech? Yes. Were you able to verify that the segments that we provided you were the same as they came off in the speech that you heard about, that you listened to, that you attended in 2009? Yes, it was. Okay, Mr. Mirth, I've handed you an exhibit we've marked as 919. Do you see that here? There, yes, and is there some writing on that? It's a CD, yes. Yeah, with my initials and the date. Okay, you listened to that this morning? Yeah, and you signed an initial that yourself? Yeah. Okay, and that verified the clips that we have selected came from the speech that you heard? Yeah, I listened to the clips right after, and it was the same one. Okay. We offer Exhibit 919. No objection. May I inquire briefly? Void Dyer by Miss Dooley. I'm Tim Dooley. I represent Coleman Barney. Did you see him at the speech? No, I don't remember seeing him. Did you hear any reference to him at the speech? No. Mr. Dooley, Your Honor, I have no objection to the exhibit if we can have an instruction limiting out Coleman Barney on that. Scrocky, if I might respond, well, if Your Honor is, I don't think that we need a limiting instruction. That's a proper cross-examination question. If I can stand for itself, well, I'm inclined to agree with plaintiff's counsel. I think an instruction is not appropriate at this time, at this point. Do you have an objection, Miss? No, Your Honor. 919 may be admitted. Direct examination continued. Mr. Scrocky, sir, with respect to this speech, do you have an occasion to write an article about it? Yes, I wrote an article for the Ledger. Okay, and in your work attending this meeting, did you have an occasion to understand whether Mr. Cox was going to someplace else in Montana? He was headed to Hamilton right after that. All right. It was in the article. That's the only reason I remember that. All right. Your Honor, with your permission, we'd like to distribute the transcript books. Yeah, and let me explain this to you folks. You can go ahead and get, thank you, that started. You're about to hear the recording, which is Exhibit 919, that has been received now in evidence. We're going to give you transcripts of this recording. We'll help you identify the speakers and help you understand it as you hear it, hopefully, the court. But you should remember that the transcript is not evidence. It is the recording that is the evidence. And so if you hear something different from what appears in the transcript, it's the recording, what you hear on the recording, that is controlling. So listen carefully. And you should also know that the transcript will not be available to you during your deliberations. It's only to assist you and not to substitute for what you hear. And these books look pretty big. There are other recordings, I understand, that'll be offered as evidence, and they're all in this book. But just look at the one they tell you to look at this point. Scrocky. And for members of the jury, this is 919. The exhibit, Your Honor, is 919. It is at the top, of course, the far end of the book, so we'll have to flip everything to get to them. You mean in the back end? Yes, sir. Okay. You can open your books to the tab marked 919, folks, but stay on the front page until they tell you to get started. Yeah, unidentified jury. I don't have anything under my 919 tab. I can't hear you. Unidentified jury. There is nothing in my book under the 919 tab. Well, find another book or something. We have one here, Your Honor. Scrocky. Mr. Mirth, if you could have your open book, your 919, just get us started, sir. Just wait until she's set there. Oh, absolutely. Are you all set? Scrocky, are you at 919? No, I can open it. Yeah, I must be looking at the wrong spot. Yeah, keep going. Okay, Mr. Mirth, all set? Yes, all right. And does this transcript appear to start out in sync with the first clip you selected that you listened to? I think so. I'd have to hear it again. Okay, well, I don't remember which order. Play it. And, okay, go ahead. Audio server log, blah, blah, blah. Audio recording. End of audio recording. The second section, please. This is okay. They're playing a bunch of audio. It doesn't even say what was said in the transcript. It just says they played something. Okay, 91903. A lot of things are being played. That concludes the audio overview. Mr. Morris, how many folks attended that meeting? I think it was around 100. Okay, and again, the time frame was when approximately? What time of the year? What or month? Yeah, the month. What was? It was late November 9. Okay, late November 9. Those are all the questions I have from Moreth. Mr. Traverso, you were there when the speeches were made, or this speech was made? Yes, I was. You were there for the entire. But you didn't. I kind of got confused by what you said. I was there the entire speech, and then okay, I wrote an article based on the speech and other things that had happened there. It wasn't just okay, Mr. Cox. Okay, and you were contacted by the FBI in 2009? No, it was a few weeks ago, 2010. Just a few weeks ago. Just a few weeks ago. Okay. Did you go to the police? No. The troopers? No. FBI? No. Did you call anybody in government about that speech? No. Thank you, sir. Traverso, no further questions. Thank you. No questions. If I have a moment, Your Honor. You bet. Thank you. Sir, on one end down here is a gentleman named Lonnie Vernon. Have you ever met him before? No, ma'am, I have not. Was he at the speech? I don't know. Have you ever heard his name before? No. Thank you. Nothing further. I have one question for you. Montana is a pretty big state. 2, where's Plains? It's about an hour and a half northwest of Missoula. Okay, all right. You may be excused. Thank you, Mr. Murrah. Thank you, sir. The government calls FBI Special Agent Leslie Copper, and we'll retrieve those binders from the jury now. That'd be great. And there are a couple of matters we should probably take up at this point. They were discussed this morning, Your Honor. You're going to collect these and pass them out for every tape, and I don't know what we discussed this morning. Counsel for Defendant Vernon, we're not picking you up. I'm sorry I couldn't hear you. Counsel for the Defendant Vernon filed a motion this morning. Oh, well, I understand, Miss Lamro, that you were not going to offer the things she had identified. Your Honor, actually, this goes with the motion in limine that I filed last week at docket 354. All right, do we have to resolve this before we proceed? All right, you folks get a free break. When you're pouring your fresh water there, take a break. We'll be with you as quick as we can. Hopefully it won't take long. The jury out at 420. Oh, court. Okay, refresh me what that was. I don't have the motion in limine here. Yes, Your Honor, there are several things that I believe Ms. Copper will touch on. The first thing, I believe most of her testimony is going to be authenticating photos, but in some of those photos, it depicts the alleged homemade blasting cap, the tripwire, and the tannerite that I've asked to be excluded. That's on page 3 of my motion at 354. Also, I believe, Ms. Lamro, we're not getting into the letters located in the vehicle. Right, not today. So we won't have to address that at this time. What about the items on the computer? Not today. So those would be the only things we need to address, Your Honor, is the homemade blasting cap that was found in Mr. Vernon's garage. It's our position that that is not a weapon. It's not designed to be a weapon. It has a small amount of black powder on it. It had no electrical power to it. It wasn't operable. No scrap metal in it. It's just simply not a weapon. There's no indication that Mr. Cox or Mr. Barney even knew about this. It was something Mr. Vernon had in his tools. The second thing is what appears to be a tripwire. Again, it wasn't connected to anything. No explosives on it. Could have been used to ring a bell or to turn on a light. There's just no indication that it's any sort of weapon or device like that. And that last thing would be the tannerite, Your Honor. The tannerite is a chemical used for target practice, long-range target practice, so that you can see it without having to walk yards and yards without whether or not you have hit your target. It's perfectly legal. There you can buy it at any gun store. It's not an explosive per se. It's not a flammable. It can only ignite with a high-velocity bullet. In other words, it has to have a bullet from a high-powered rifle. Not even a pistol will set it off. It's designed for long-range target practice. Thank you, Your Honor. We did file our opposition to the motion in docket 367 as we set forth in opposition, and some of these items are also on the subject of stipulation that was signed for the defendants, but the items, the tannerite, the blasting cap, the booby trap, triggering device, we were all found in Mr. Vernon's home. The tannerite is an item that was used during their militia trainings. It's similar to the same type of tannerite that was found in the trailer. These items are all indicate that the Vernons were clearly serious. They were committed to the conspiracy. Schaefer Cox was living with the Vernons for a while. These items were all relevant to show their commitment and that they were capable of harming people with these items. And the testimony at trial will reflect that tannerite is an ammonium nitrate powder. Your Honor, if I could just follow up with one additional thing. There's no indication that these items were in the Vernon's home and Mr. Cox was there. I originally denied this motion, I think, in order to hear the evidence. And I guess I still kind of feel that way. I'm not sure how this all, but this is like you got all these other things. You got a shotgun, so is that evidence of this whole thing? A blasting cap, I don't know how you can use. I don't know how you can use blasting cap for. I don't use them, so I don't know what's so sinister about this. I haven't heard the evidence yet, and if it's tied up in some way to something that is relative to the case, fine. I don't know how I can rule out it in advance without hearing the evidence. So the motion in limine is denied. The motion that doesn't make it admissible. That's the long answer for a short question. Ms. Lamoureux, one challenge we have is we do have this trial stipulation, which has been signed by all the defendants, and we would ask that the U.S. witness read the trial stipulation into the record. When given the unavailability of the witness, there will be experts in the future, I believe, testifying about some of these items, but at this point, we would seek some clarification regarding the trial stipulation. Your Honor, the defendant has not signed it. No, they don't. Oh, my apologies. And it's the defense counsel. Yeah. And Your Honor, the trial stipulation goes to the chain of custody, simply where these items were found, not whether we agree that they're admissible, just simply to keep the government from having to, yes, call their custodian of record back from Iraq. One final note, Your Honor. If the court does allow the trip wire in, I would object to it being referred to as a booby trap. I'm happy we can refer to it as we indicated in the trial stipulation. All right, now, counsel, we have each of you gone over the stipulation with your clients in detail and carefully. I have done so with Coleman Barney. Yes, Your Honor, we have discussed, generally, we have gone by the item with him because of logistics. Well, now is the time to do it. I can't very well discuss it with him. That's my copy. You can borrow it. Judge, when you said the motion was denied, was that the new motion that filed this morning? No. Thank you. What's the docket number? It was previously denied 354. Docket 354 is previously denied, and you've not ruled yet. Yeah, the new motion. Well, is that correct? Yeah, it's still denied. Thank you. It was reconsidered and denied. Okay. Yeah, I see nothing objectionable, Your Honor. Oh, all right. Well, here's the thing to the three of you. I want you to understand this. As I think you're aware, you have a right to confront the witnesses against you. That means you have a right to hear the witnesses testify and have them cross-examined here in court and during trial. If you stipulate to the evidence that is the trial stipulation, then you're giving up the right to cross-examine the witnesses, and that would testify to these particular things in the stipulation. All of you understand that? Mr. Barney, do you understand that? The defendant Barney, the court Barney, and have all of you discussed it with your lawyers as to whether you should agree to this? Yeah, Mr. Barney, an audible reply. Mr. Cox, the defendant Cox, yes. And counsel, you're satisfied with your clients to understand their rights in this regard and their position in regard to the stipulation? Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Cox, do you agree with the stipulation and give up your right to cross-examine a witness who would testify to this? This is the defendant Cox. This is the witness that's in the Iraq, correct? Walsh? Yes, Walsh. Side conversing. The court, Mr. Barney. The defendant Barney, yes. The court, Mr. Vernon. The defendant Vernon, an audible reply. The court, all right, I'll accept the stipulation. How do you want to present it to the jury? I would like the next witness to read it to the jury. All right, fine with me. Do you anticipate marking it as exhibit or just having it read? We'll just have it read. Okay, let's use the last half hour to advantage. Do you have your witnesses here? Yeah. A lot of audio logs. I want to again remind you of my instructions. Don't discuss the case with each other. Don't let anyone talk you out about it. Don't discuss the case with anyone else. Don't read, view, or listen or anyone accounts or computer-generated accounts of these proceedings. Keep your minds open on all issues. Don't make any independent investigation about any of the matters you've heard in court. Don't go to any of the places you mentioned or anything of the kind. Get all your information here in the courtroom, and when you go home, your family or your friends are going to say, oh, you know what case you're on, and they'll start telling you all about it, and they don't know all about it. But if you're like most families, they know a lot of things that you don't really know. So in any event, cut off those conversations and tell them the judge has ordered you. You just can't talk about it. You'll talk about it when the case is over. That can be a lot to ask of you each, but that's what you need to do. Okay, we'll reconvene Monday morning, not tomorrow. You get tomorrow off, Monday morning at 8:30. So be here early and ready to go at 8:30. Let me tell you something else. You know, juries often worry about, oh my gosh, we have this time off, I'll forget what's going on. The human mind is such that you don't, and you'll come in, and if you forget about the case over the weekend, that's great. You'll come in Monday morning and sit down, and you'll go right back in it. So enjoy the weekend. Don't worry about this work, all of you. Go about the rest of your lives. Okay, we'll see you on Monday. The court, okay, you don't want to leave? Side conversing. Agent Copper, on an entirely separate matter, were you in the terrorism task force in Los Angeles, Miss Copper? Not in Los Angeles and Denver. Oh, my son was on that in Los Angeles. I just thought maybe you had run across him. Okay, I'll be back. I hope you all will too. The clerk, all rise. This matter in recess Monday at 8:30. The court is adjourned subject to call. Proceedings to concluded at 5:03 p.m. Okay. What an absolute bunch of crap that this whole fourth day has been. Nothing but just grandstanding and making it look like there's a huge bomb and a huge threat and showing pieces and parts and making a big deal. It's just insanity what's gone on this fourth day.